Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up this hour. Another set of classified documents are found in U.S. President Joe Biden's possession, drawing comparisons with former President Donald Trump, plus protests in Peru against removal of former President Pedro Castillo. Let's check in on other stories now. China's Hainan Airlines on Tuesday launched its first direct flight between northeast China's Harbin city and Khabarovsk, in the largest city in Russia's far east bordering northeast China, facilitating cross-border exchanges between the two countries after China's border reopening in the wake of the country's significant relaxation of pandemic restrictions in early December. China has decided to refine its COVID-19 response with new prevention and control measures and to ease restrictions on travel and visits to public venues. On January 8th, the Civil Aviation Administration of China relaxed certain COVID-19 restrictions on international passenger flights. It's the first time in 3 years planes of foreign airlines have landed at the Khabarovsk Novi International Airport. As the main airport in Russia's far east, many of the passengers were Chinese people coming for work or study. For the new visitors, border and customs check is still required, but no longer COVID-19 tests. In accordance with China's latest regulations, inbound passengers are requested to show only negative nucleic acid test results taken within 48 hours, which applies not only to Chinese nationals, but also to Russian citizens. In barely 2 weeks, a third of the Harbin-Khabarovsk air tickets have already been sold out. There are only a few available for flights from Russia to China. And in other parts of Russia's far east, the entry-exit exchanges have also picked up. For the first time in 3 years, a Chinese delegation entered Russia's Primorsky Krai from Honchun Kraskino port. 35 people left Russia's Zaberlik, left one of the towns, near the area for China. Well, China has also been seeing an increasingly growing number of cross-border flights and passengers, with business trips becoming more convenient and more overseas Chinese returning home to enjoy family reunion after 3 years of separation. Countries preparing for the Spring Festival, and it's optimizes quarantine and travel requirements since January 8th. On January 8th, China started managing COVID-19 with measures designed for combating Class B infectious diseases instead of a Class A. According to infected patients, infected patients will no longer be placed in isolation and their close contacts will no longer get tracked. Disease control measures targeting incoming travelers and imported cargo, such as quarantine restrictions, have also been lifted. While elaborating on the changes of the line of work from two aspects after China's reopening, a police officer said the spiritual distance between people is closer after letting go of the fear of the virus. In recent months, the country has made an array of active adjustments in its COVID response, ranging from 20 measures in November to 10 in December, and then changing the Chinese term for COVID-19 from novel coronavirus pneumonia to novel coronavirus infection, and downgrading COVID-19 measures and management. Well, back here in Africa, China has inaugurated an $80 million headquarters for the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa. Present at the inauguration was the newly appointed Chinese Foreign Minister, Qin Gang, who's visiting Ethiopia as part of a week-long tour of the continent. He was joined by the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat. Mr. Qin said the project was testament to the growing relations between his country and Africa. It was built and equipped by China. Beijing accelerated its involvement to tackle health crisis after the Ebola outbreak in West Africa in 2014. Welcome back. And before the break, we talked about China establishing and inaugurating the African Center for Disease Control in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, just yesterday. And the increased investment by Western countries in Africa is seen as a validation of China-Africa cooperation model, which largely focuses on investment in infrastructure and has been fruitful in spurring development across the continent, according to an analyst at an independent Africa-led international development consultancy called Development Reimagined, Mr. Ovie Egwegu. Well, he believes that China is Africa's biggest investor. Rise in trade flows and greater investment have been and will remain, he says, critical to promoting job creation, growth, development, and integration into the global economy. Many of the infrastructure projects that are helping to transform and develop Africa, he says, are Chinese funded.
African countries have realized that the infrastructure model or the infrastructure investment model that China is taking with Africa actually, is very positive for African development, and not just even African countries realizing that. You see that the G7's Partnership for Global Infrastructure Initiative (PGI) and even the European Union's Global Gateway all came after the BRI. And I will always argue that those two initiatives by Western countries were introduced because they have recognized the positive impact that infrastructure investment has created in developing countries. So in a way, it's a validation of China's approach. And that's why many African countries who have been arguing even before those initiatives were put up by Western countries continue to work more closely with China. If you even listen to what the Ethiopian Prime Minister said during the visit of the ongoing visit of Foreign Minister Shingang, he did say that there will be a strengthening of exchanges of governance experience between China and Ethiopia, and all of this is because of the fact that the countries have realized that when it comes to China-Africa relations, there is a model, and the model has been delivering so far. So whether you're looking at for infrastructure, you're looking at trade policy, policy coordination, financial inclusion, and people-to-people exchanges. So it's a very robust collaboration or cooperation.
And we're off to the United States, where we're learning this developing story of another batch of classified documents found in possession of the U.S. President Joe Biden. Two batches of files have now been found, and it's just been confirmed that one set was discovered in his garage. When asked about it, the president said that he takes classified materials seriously. Reporters did imply that the president had those documents out on the streets, but he says they were discovered at his home. His lawyers have reviewed other places where documents from his time as vice president were stored, and they're reviewing them. He said they were not on the streets as implied by the reporter, but that they were in his garage. He says he's fully cooperating with the investigation. A first cache of classified documents were found at a private hospital in Washington, D.C. that Mr. Biden used after his vice presidency. This matter is under review by the U.S. Department of Justice. Former President Donald Trump, as we remember, is facing a criminal investigation for allegedly mishandling classified files. It's not clear yet when or where additional tranche of files are being found, but the original batch of 10 documents was discovered in November at the Penn Biden Center, a think tank near the White House, but it only came to light this week. The papers reportedly include U.S. intelligence memos and briefing materials related to Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdom. They also relate to his time as vice president under former President Barack Obama. It's not clear why they turned up in a private office that he started using after that. Let's bring in foreign affairs commentator Calvin Dark. Calvin, are you just as surprised as I am? That we're reading this story weeks after, the discovery at the Mar-a-Lago residence of former President Donald Trump was also, made headlines. And, he had Trump supporters out on the streets protesting his innocence, saying that, he probably just took them home because he had, some more reading to do. And he's been trying to clear his name and also trying to clear reasons why those documents were also found in his possession.
Yes, and here's another wrinkle to add this already huge mess. We remember when Merrick Garland in November appointed a special counsel to handle the investigation into Trump and the documents, right?
Right.
Well, what came out today is that November 2nd, right before the midterms, Biden was notified of it, and Merrick Garland, he was appointing a special counsel to investigate Trump, knowing that this issue existed with Biden that no one said anything about until after the election. Now, legally, I don't know if that has any bearing, on his timeline, but politically, it's just a mess.
Yeah, and can we say that the US president has committed a crime? I mean, those documents were not supposed to have left the White House in the first place.
Well, I think that for President Biden, and this also goes for former President Trump, it's the willfulness. Were these willfully kept? Was this just, documents being mismanaged? And that's where the Justice Department has to carry on two separate investigations. And I think it's going to hinge on the willful concealment, as they call it.
What do Americans think, of the way the Justice Department has handled this when you compare a treatment of Donald Trump and now Joe Biden side by side? What do they think? Can they trust the DOJ?
Well, that's something that it's a very big issue here because, particularly over the last 10 years, America is very polarized. You usually look at news from whatever political camp lens you come from. But now let's talk about the differences just a little bit. Legally, as we were saying, the Justice Department is going to see if there was willful concealment. One thing that is different on the legal side in Trump's case versus Biden's is they asked for over a year nicely to Trump. He gave a subpoena. And then he even said he had turned them all over and he hadn't. In Biden's case, it was his attorneys that turned over the documents as soon as they were found. But now politically, this is a win for Trump. And the reason is those legal technicalities and nuances do not exist in politics. And for that reason, I find it hard to believe that the Justice Department is going to have any charges against Trump because right now, people are looking at how the Justice Department acts from the point of view of the political persuasion they hold.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm wondering, how Democrats are also spinning this story. Some believe the president, well, he probably forgot. He's not going to sell any of those secrets. I mean, those classified documents, the first tranche, they said, contained information on on Iran. They contain information on Ukraine as well as the United Kingdom. I mean, this is Joe Biden we're talking about. What could he possibly do with the classified documents in his possession? Or what could he have done with them?
Well, that remains to be seen. It could be for, a book he was going to write or his memoirs, because remember, this is when he was vice president. And the Democrats have been trying to spin this in two ways. One, highlighting the differences I was talking about with Trump, namely that Biden is cooperating. But they're going to have a hard time because here's another thing that works in Trump's favor. Trump can say that, he was not in government ever until he ran for president. Biden was in the Senate for 30 plus years. He was the head of the Foreign Relations Committee, where he got top secret documents, then 8 more years as vice president. How can someone who had access to top secret documents for at least the last 45 years now say, oh, I just left them in my garage beside my Corvette?
Yeah, it sounds like a really clumsy reason. Has there been other the House of Representatives, which has just elected a speaker, will they also be discussing this now? I mean, having gotten the first order of the day out of the way, will this be an issue presented before them? Will they chew on this for a bit? Will they have opinions on it? Will they also call for, certain measures against the president?
Oh, they're already calling for it, and I know that some of the Republican leaders are already saying they know it's willful that Biden kept them for some nefarious purpose. Let's keep in mind that the Republicans in the House of Representatives have only two real things that they're going to do. One is messaging bills, legislation that they know is not going to get passed, but puts out a message about something that they feel strongly about. The other is investigations. They already had a dozen things they were going to investigate about the Biden administration. This adds to it. Jim Jordan, the head of the Oversight Committee, has already said he wants documents. He wants to know everything about it because they're going to pounce on it. And like I said, this will not help Biden politically.
Has this ever happened before, Calvin? Before Trump, before Biden as president, before Barack Obama? Has it ever happened in U.S. history?
Not that we know of, but this is the scary part, and this goes to it's not even a Republican or Democratic thing. Most Americans assume that the National Archives should be keeping records of where our classified documents are. And let's keep in mind too that in the case of Biden, nobody's asked for them. So that kind of gives me pause that our archives didn't know they existed. So has this happened before? It probably has. We just haven't caught it. And that speaks to another thing that needs to be done with our record keeping system, that we keep track of the classified documents and that they are appropriately declassified if they need to be, so that you don't go through what we're seeing now.
Yeah, it does sound a bit scary. There's some state secrets are out there and anyone could get their hands on them. Calvin, thanks again.
Thank you.
We're still in the United States. A water rescue mission in Sonoma County, California, came to a sad end on Wednesday after a crew found the dead body of a woman who drowned in her flooded car. A video released by the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office showed rescue crews on a jet ski and in a boat returning towards the shallow end of the floodwaters that covered a wide expanse of land in the town of Forestville. The Sheriff's Office said they found a car submerged in about 10 feet of water early Wednesday morning. A deputy dove into the water to see if the car was still occupied and found the body of the driver, a 43-year-old woman named Daphne Fontino, inside the vehicle. At least 17 people have died in California since the start of the year as part of the state have been battered by floods, gale force winds and power outages, prompting evacuations of entire towns. Another weather system is expected to drench most of the state this weekend, according to the National Weather Service. Also, parts of Sacramento have been inundated by floods after a round of Pacific storms rode through California. Drone footage showed high waters rising from Yolo Bypass, the wildlife area, rising around Interstate 5. Northern California has been battered by deadly rains and powerful winds that have chased thousands from their homes and flooded entire towns. A newest round of storms was expected to produce torrential downpours and gale force winds along the northern coast, where the threat of flooding will persist until Friday. A forecast comes as a historic stretch of heavy rains and fierce winds since the end of December has caused widespread flooding, the submerged towns and mudslides that have blocked major highways. Storms which have dumped more than 2 feet of rain in some areas have killed at least 17 people since the start of the year. And now to the House of Representatives. Embattled Representative George Santos should resign from Congress after telling lie after lie after lie about his career and his history. So says a group of senior Republicans from his suburban New York district. Before the group of more than a dozen top Republicans from Nassau County in New York were done urging Santos to step down, the newly elected congressman rejected their call, telling reporters at the Capitol that he would stay in office. The Republicans made their plea at a news conference 2 days after a nonpartisan watchdog accused Santos of breaking campaign finance laws in a filing with the Federal Election Commission. The top Republicans in the House of Representatives, who hold a narrow 222 to 212 majority, have not called for Santos to resign. The majority leader, Kevin McCarthy, told reporters on Wednesday Santos would not be given a seat on any key committees. Santos represents much of Nassau County as well as a small slice of New York City. He's admitted to fabricating much of his resume. He won his November race over Democrat Robert Zimmerman by a margin of 7.5 percentage points. His victory, however, was quickly overshadowed by media reports indicating the persona he presented to voters is largely a work of fiction.
He's a national joke, he's an international joke, but this joke's got to go. and is on us calling him for him to resign immediately.
Meanwhile, collapsed cryptocurrency exchange FTX has located more than $5 billion of assets, according to an attorney for the firm. But a U.S. bankruptcy court has told that the extent of losses to customers is still unknown. Prosecutors have accused FTX former chief executive Sam Bankman-Fried of orchestrating an epic fraud that may have cost investors, customers and lenders billions of dollars. Bankman-Fried has pleaded not guilty to charges that he cheated investors. According to an attorney for FTX, we have located over $5 billion of cash, liquid cryptocurrency and liquid investment securities. He says the recovered funds do not include assets seized by the Securities Commission of the Bahamas, where FTX was based and where Mr. Bankman-Fried was living at the time of his arrest. Most of FTX's customers and investors who are facing losses have not been named in the hearings, but American football star Tom Brady, his former wife Gisele Bündchen, and New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft were mentioned in court filings. Chinese state media say 5 people have been killed, 13 others wounded after a car drove into a crowd of pedestrians crossing the road, mowing several people down. A video footage obtained showed the car crashing into the pedestrians and driving off as those hit were left lying on the road. We're not able to confirm the location, of the videos, but by matching the structures, it's clear this probably happened in Guangzhou. Local authorities have arrested the driver and they're investigating the incident, according to reports. China's transport system has posted a total output of 37.8 million passenger trips by railway, road, waterway and air. It's the 5th day of Spring Festival travel rush. People across the country embarking on their journey to reunite with their families. Specifically, a daily total volume of trips saw a year-on-year increase of 41.4%, while experiencing a decrease of 48.9% compared to the same period in 2019. Now, in general, our country's rail, highway, water and air transportation sectors handling 6.688 million, 29.62 million, and 416,000 and 1.164 million passenger trips a day, respectively. Over 34.25 million vehicles took to the country's expressway network on Wednesday. China has seen 8,492 trains running on the national railway network as of Wednesday alone. Rail authorities have made well-orchestrated arrangements to ensure smooth passenger transport to deal with a new round of cold snap. In bilateral talks, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has arrived in Abu Dhabi to hold meetings with the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and Emirati officials. He'll be seeking a fresh economic package for his country from the United Arab Emirates during his 2-day visit to the Emirates. The UAE has agreed to roll over an existing loan of $2 billion to Pakistan and provide an additional $1 billion loan, according to the Information Minister. And Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has urged Papua New Guinea to deepen defence ties in an address to its parliament today, a first foreign leader to address the Pacific Nations Parliament. Albanese says Australia and the PNG are 2 big Pacific Ocean states and must work as equals to build a more secure region. A security treaty will be based on deep trust and address PNG's priorities of law and order challenges, strengthen the justice system and rule of law, according to Albanese.
This can be a decisive decade for peace, prosperity, unity and security in the Indo-Pacific. As 2 big Pacific Ocean states, Australia and PNG must work as equals with our fellow Pacific states to build a stronger, safer, more secure region. All of us have a part to play in realising that vision. In the years ahead, Australia and Papua New Guinea have a chance to honour our shared history of service in the cause of peace by adding to it, deepening our defence ties and enhancing our national security cooperation, and achieving a swift conclusion to negotiations on a bilateral security treaty. A treaty that will underpin our work together to address PNG's priority needs, including law and order challenges, strengthening the justice system, and strengthening the rule of law. A treaty based on deep trust, and a treaty that builds on the family-first approach to regional security.
Welcome back to the program. We're in Peru now, where clashes have broken out between protesters and police in the tourist city of Cusco just a month after demonstrations have left 47 people dead over the removal of former President Pedro Castillo. Health officials in Cusco say 37 civilians and 6 police officers were injured on Wednesday when protesters tried to take over the city's Alejandro Velasco Astete International Airport, a gateway for tourists to visit the nearby Incan citadel of Machu Picchu. Well, one civilian later died after being hit by gunfire. Video footage received there showing protesters throwing stones at police. Police also trying to clear the protesters from the area using tear gas and force. People were injured across the area. Cusco's crime prevention prosecutor, Eduardo Poblete, said the demonstrators wanted to emulate Monday's protests in the southern city of Juliaca near Lake Titicaca, where 17 people were killed in violence as thousands of protesters attempted to take the airport. The violence is said to be the worst in the Andean country in more than 20 years. It's sparked by the abrupt removal of the left-wing Pedro Castillo in early December. To another protest, this time in Venezuela. Public servants, health workers, teachers and pensioners took to the streets of the capital, Caracas, to demand better wages, waving Venezuelan flags and banners with out-of-circulation Bolivar banknotes. Hundreds of protesters marched through the streets of downtown Caracas to the headquarters of the Ombudsman's office. High inflation and Venezuela's gradual shift to the dollar are widening the wage gap between public and private sector workers. Public employees earn the equivalent of between $30 to $100 per month, according to government salary reviews. Members of the pro-government National Assembly have said the government lacks sufficient resources to meet its labor commitments because of U.S. sanctions. Annual inflation in October 2022 hit 155%. According to calculations using the central bank data, highest rate in the region, and it's also more than half of Venezuelans live currently in poverty. Family members of Greece's former king Constantine II, who died on Tuesday, have been making preparations for his funeral at a family royal estate north of Athens. The former summer palace of Tatwa and the slopes of Mount Pranita, some 27 kilometers from Athens, contains the grave sites of royalty, including Constantine's parents, Paul and Frederica. Earlier today, members of the family, including his sister, Spain's former Queen Sofia, visited the site to make preparations for the funeral, which is to take place on January 16. Bulldozers could be seen clearing out areas around the royal graves. Royals from across Europe are expected to arrive in Greece for the funeral. A funeral procession will be held at the Orthodox Metropolitan Cathedral of Athens, and the burial will take place in Tatwa. A palace was a summer haven for the family until Constantine fled Greece in 1967. For decades, Tatwa Palace, a large stone mansion with Gothic details, was neglected to the point of collapse as lawyers fought over the property and governments hesitated to handle a royal hot potato. A European court eventually ordered Greece to compensate the former king for his family properties and pay him 12 million euros. In 2002, Constantine was allowed in the early 1990s to retrieve many items from Tatwa, piling up 9 containers. Prince William and his wife Kate made their first public appearance today since the release of his brother, Prince Harry's tell-all memoir and TV interviews in which he made accusations against them and other royals. In his book Spare, Harry divulges that he had begged his father not to marry his second wife, Camilla, now the Queen Consort. The book also delivered numerous other revelations, including that elder brother and heir to the throne, William, had knocked him over during a heated argument. Harry also used promotional interviews to double down on his claims that some royals, including Camilla and William, and their aides had leaked damaging stories to tabloid papers about him or his American wife, Meghan, in order to protect themselves or enhance their reputations. Smiling and happy-looking William and Kate, who he also criticizes in the book, were visiting a hospital in northern England. They made no public references to the saga. So far, neither Buckingham Palace nor aides for any of the royals have commented on Harry's disclosures. Finally, what can be called great news: an endangered western chimpanzee has been born at Chester Zoo in the United Kingdom. The animal is regarded as the world's rarest chimpanzee by the conservationists. The zoo is located at Upton by Chester, Cheshire in England. Although the birth was a small addition, it is surely a vital boost to the global population of this critically endangered species. The baby Box, who is in good health, has bonded well with his mother and the rest of the horde. The chimpanzee will now be named after a rock or pop star, as per the tradition of the zoo. The zoo has previously welcomed Alice, Dylan, and Annie, so they say to watch this space from Chester Zoo for the new cub's name. Mum Zizi and new baby instantly bonded. The mother is doing great, cradling him close and caring for him, according to zoo authorities. Well, may he grow up happy and strong. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.